Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. We shall start now, okay, since I see participants are coming in. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another event in our regular series of Innovation Thursdays, except today it's held on a Wednesday. You must be wondering why. It's very strange to me too, but today we are kickstarting off on a Wednesday because it marks our first launch of the National Innovation Challenge, the NIC, as I shall refer to it from now on, with 4 challenges on the IMDA's Open Innovation Platform. Thanks for taking the time in the afternoon to join us. Here's a quick look at today's program. Can we show the program slide, please? We will have openings done by Howie Lau, our Assistant CE of IMDA, followed by Edwin Chow, Assistant CE of ESG. And then introducing the NIC program, we have Alvin Koh of IMDA, followed by the 4 companies that will share on their challenges today. Next slide. Yeah, and then we'll do a quick closing. After each company, we'll have a 10-minute Q&A session. So for any of your Q&A sessions, Q&A questions, you can put it into the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom bar. Some ground rules before we start. Please make sure all your microphones are muted. And for any questions you may have, use the Q&A button and we'll try to answer it. For any questions we can't answer today, we'll bring it to the OIP platform after. Okay, now that we got the operational part out of the way, the NIC is the Open Innovation Platform's 3rd and latest category of challenges. And today you will hear from 4 problem owners. Congratulations on being the first batch of audience to hear from our problem owners on the 4 challenges today. And thank you to our NIC problem owners for joining us today as well. Before all of that begins, let's just invite Howie Lau, the Assistant CE of Media and Innovation, IMDA, to share more about the National Innovation Challenges on the Open Innovation Platform, followed by Mr. Edwin Chow, Innovation and Enterprise of ESG, to say a few words. I shall now hand over to Howie. Howie, you have the stage.
Hey,
Okay, go ahead.
Well, everyone, thanks so much for joining us on this rainy Wednesday. I think all of us know that the D&D of disruption and digitalization has been with us for a while. And what COVID has done is basically accelerated because they accelerate the digitization, but it's also accelerated the amount of disruption that's out there. But what we're also seeing is that beyond the challenges, we're starting to see a lot more opportunities as well coming out as a result of the changes we're seeing in the market. So as I mentioned earlier, today is unique. We put ahead the Innovation Thursday to Wednesday because today we're announcing the National Innovation Challenge. This was something that was mentioned in DPM's Fortitude speech about a month ago. And since then, we've been working with the problem owners to come up with some of the challenges because the end in mind of the National Innovation Challenge is basically to solve some of these nationwide and sector-wide challenges that we're seeing and to find opportunities that has both scale as well as a speed to impact. So that's where we've invited the problem owners later to share a little bit about what they're looking at. And this is also the first time that all our friends across the government, from NRF to Enterprise Singapore, as well as IMDA, we're coming together because it is a national effort because it's important for us to put a collective, put our collective assets and resources together to see how we can drive this forward. It's obviously running off platforms that has already some traction, and many of you on the problem solver side will be familiar with OIP. And beyond us coming together, we'll also be putting in funds the innovation. So those familiar with IP, as you know, that innovation at the POC stage. So this time around, what we're doing is that we're providing additional support and grants across the POC stage to the development stage as well as to the adoption stage. So we do hope that you would engage with us and participate in the challenges because some of it, as you will hear later, are very unique and a very set of challenges that we are looking for innovative solutions. And then to close off, I read this document from a Société Générale financial report. The main thing I liked about it was a headline, and the headline was rough seas, favorable winds. Rough seas, favorable winds, because I think it kind of shapes where we are today. in that while it's challenging and there's rough seas, the winds are favorable because there is a collective effort on a global as well as on a national level to try new things. There is a collective effort and willingness to collaborate and to innovate and to take on new challenges. There is also a collective understanding on potentially the new opportunities that may be available. So we're actually very excited that the National Innovation Challenge hopefully is not just opportunities for us to solve some of the new challenges we're facing, but hopefully to create new opportunities as well for Singapore. So again, thank you very much for joining us. Let me pass over to my good friend Edwin to share his thoughts as well. Edwin, over to you.
All right, thank you, Howie. Just a quick sound check. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
All
yes,
right.
yes, we can hear you.
Anyway, my name is Edwin Chow. Thanks, Howie, again for inviting me to join to Gatecrash, your Innovation Wednesday event. But I thought it's good for also for me to share as a start a little bit about Enterprise Singapore's efforts in promoting innovation and why we are so keen to work with IMDA and NRF on this National Innovation Challenge launch. So as most of you know, we Enterprise Singapore, we are set up to help local enterprises, especially our SMEs and startups, to grow, to become more productive, to overcome our limited markets by internationalizing, and finally to innovate, to shift to a business model that does not rely on competing on cost. And it's really in this third pillar of our work, this drive towards innovation, that is the context for us working very closely with Howie and his team at the OIP, because we share a common vision that if you want to catalyze innovation, it makes a lot of sense to start with those problem owners, to identify those issues and challenges that people, companies, governments are prepared to pay to solve, and then to facilitate the matching of these problem owners with solvers such as yourselves, both on the digital side, right? People who are software programmers can solve problems digitally, but also problems that require some physical hardware, engineering, etc. to solve. So that's something that we at Enterprise Singapore have been doing for a few years now, and it makes a lot of sense for us to join forces with IMDA and Howie and his team to scale this up to a larger swath of our economy. Now, I think COVID-19, I'm stating the obvious, but worth repeating, COVID-19 has changed a lot for many of our companies and for entire economic sectors, right? We all have to adapt to a new normal, how to operate safely. And as Howie rightly mentioned, these rough seas are also full of good opportunities for people who can seize them. And it is again in that context that we are launching today this set of new challenges. But I also want to give a plug to an event that we are organizing where my chairman, Mr. Peter Ong, will be speaking later at 3 o'clock. And that's our Trade and Connectivity Challenge. This is a similar sort of setup to OIP, where we have arranged about 13 problem owners who in the trade and connectivity cluster. So these are traders, logistics providers, aviation, maritime companies, and so on, who have identified problems that they need to solve in order to cope better with COVID. And there will be there's a seminar that you can sign up for later. Welcome you to join. And subsequently, a website will be dedicated to hosting all of the challenges, and you are welcome to find out more to see if you want to make a bid for them as well. But as I said, this COVID-19 has given us a lot of challenges and opportunities, and we would want to work closely with the industry to come up with solutions that are practical, that can be adopted at speed and at scale. And one thing I would like to highlight with this Trade and Connectivity Challenge event is that for the first time, we're having two problem owners from outside of Singapore. One comes from Dubai and another from Kazakhstan. And they will be offering challenges that they face in their home countries. And our hope is that Singapore-based solvers like yourselves will be able to piggyback on this, develop solutions that are scalable almost from day one. So I think this is a good way for me maybe to round up now. I am conscious of time and I don't want to take too much away from my colleagues who will be briefing you on the details. Suffice to say that we are very excited here at Enterprise Singapore to work with IMDA and with NRF to push this innovation agenda forward. And we look forward to working with you and your colleagues to solve these problems for the benefit of Singapore and for the rest of us. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Edwin. If anybody likes to join the event, you can actually scan the QR code and sign up. It will start at 3 p.m. later, so right after our event. Thank you, Edwin, for your speech. Thank you, Howie, for the introduction earlier. We have now a video to share with you on the NIC. Can we play the video, please?
The National Innovation Challenge was launched by IMDA, Enterprise Singapore, and the National Research Foundation to help companies and the economy emerge stronger from COVID over the mid to long term. 4 problem statements will be hosted on IMDA's Open Innovation platform. They tackle issues such as ensuring workforce safety and business continuity in the construction industry, enhancing engagement with tourism destinations through 5G-enabled virtual experiences, managing pandemic risk among port workers with an integrated track and trace system, and creating a safe environment for visitors and exhibitors attending events. Up to 8 million will be set aside for this launch by IMDA to support development and deployment of solutions nationwide. Check out the Open Innovation Platform or Open Innovation Network for more details. We look forward to receiving your submissions.
Yep, so that was a video on the NIC. It's my pleasure now to invite Alvin Kwok, also from IMDA, to go more into details of the National Innovation Challenges. So Alvin, if you're around.
Yes. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Let me share my screen and I'll show you. We have a short deck of slides on this. Do let me know if you can't see the movement on the screen because I'll be sharing it. The truth is, with all the introduction and the videos, there's really not that much for me to add on. So I'll just go through this quickly. I'm sure most of you are quite familiar with the Open Innovation Network and the platform, as well as the calls that we've been making over the last couple of the years. So I'll just run through this quickly just to apprise you of the main differences. So, as Howie mentioned, Deputy Prime Minister Heng Swee Keat made a 42 budget speech and announced a set of innovation challenges to develop industry-led solutions that could solve the critical problems rising from COVID and to catalyze the partnerships across the economy in order to ride the wave of digital innovation and really to address the issues of reopening and the recovery of our economy. And so what we're doing now is we're launching a series of special National Innovation Challenges calls starting from today, and they'll be done across Q3 and Q4 of this year, and perhaps even further on. And it's really to address the immediate nationwide priorities, right? How do we reopen Singapore safely to achieve safe workplaces, safe homes, safe schools, safe commuting, as well as the medium to long-term solutions for emerging stronger? So in this sense, the challenges are larger in scope and scale. We want to deal with economy-wide impact across multiple sectors, across multiple problem owners and problem solvers, as well as speed. We want to have accelerated deployment, development, and adoption. Now, the NIC rides on the Open Innovation Network. So this is something that you're familiar with, something that jointly managed by IMDA and ESG colleagues to support companies in getting quality and multidisciplinary ideas, talent, and resources to meet their innovation and business needs. In fact, it's been relatively successful, right? We have launched a combined 290 challenges with more than 80 projects and $13 million awarded. And in fact, the past innovation calls have successfully solved challenges across various sectors and needs, and they are led by both public and private sector. And I'm quite sure some of you in the audience today have probably participated in these. And some of these challenges have helped problem owners innovate and solve real problems on the ground, thereby improving safety and productivity, as well as reduce manpower reliance. And we have anywhere from BCA, HDB, SIA, who have participated as problem owners, as well as Singtel and STEC. So how is the NIC different from the Open Innovation Network challenges? Maybe I can use a comparison with the Open Innovation Platform. Compared to the OIP, we are looking at economy-wide impact. We also provide, as how we mentioned, more funding, where these innovation challenges were previously capped at a smaller amount and only awarded pretty much for prototype development. The NIC provides more funding, as well as extending funding support to the deployment and adoption of commercialized solutions. Right? And because these challenges also tend to be economy-wide, we're also pushing for adoption from the industry post-deployment phase. And finally, because of the time-sensitive nature of reopening, we're also looking at something with accelerated deployment and time to market. I'll go into a bit more detail on this later on. In terms of funding support, about 40 million will be set aside for the NIC. As mentioned, includes support for deployment and adoption. Up to 2 million will be allocated to support each challenge statement, with funding support of up to 70% for Singapore-based enterprises and 100% for IHLs and researchers collaborating with Singapore-based enterprises. And this will be split into two buckets. 1 million to support the prototyping and development, and the deployment rather, and 1 million for adoption support. To give you a flavor of the sort of challenge criteria we're looking at, the published challenges will need to meet 4 main criteria. First of all, it must be impactful. We're looking out for innovative solutions that will address immediate safe reopening needs or the growth and resilience of the economy in the long term. And the solution will have to impact a wider market. Secondly, the solution will have to benefit problem owners and adopters at large, not only in generating economic outcomes, such as productivity, growth, manpower savings, but also intangibles, pretty much safety, right? And the third is speed to market. We want something that will go out now, today, when we are still in phase 2, when everyone and the economy is reopening. We're not looking at something that is a long tail, 2 years, 3 years of development, at which point in time, there's really not much impact on, by the time COVID might pretty much blow over already. Fourthly, problem owners and participating members have to be committed to resolving this problem, including providing pilot sites and test bidding resources. So as problem solvers, you can rest assured that there'll be a lot of support, not just from IMDA and ESG, but also problem owners to really facilitate the deployment, development, and adoption of the solutions. Now, I want to be clear, this is not a procurement exercise. The challenges are not looking for solutions that are ready off the shelf or to be so specific that will only be used for one corporate member, right? And the project should, as I said, not have a long gestation period to market, because that will defeat the purpose. Now that you have a gist of what the NIC is about, what's left, right? Well, the process at this stage is not so different from the regular OIP calls. After today, you'll be given some time to look at the challenges and submit proposals before a closing date. Proposals will continue to be evaluated by the problem owners and IMDA, Enterprise Singapore, NRF, and problem solvers will be shortlisted to begin the prototyping. Now, what is new is that there will be additional phases for deployment and adoption. First of all, there will be a pilot deployment in order to test the solution in a real-world environment and for further refinement of the prototype. The problem owner will provide a test site and facilitate the solution deployment. And if successful, the solution will be promoted for adoption at scale. We will provide support to productize or commercialize the solution for eventual scaling up and adoption. And the commercial solutions will help to build your track record and form good customer references to other clients facing similar challenges, not only locally, but globally. So as Kerry mentioned, we have invited the problem owners today to walk you through some of their challenge statements and what they're looking for. But just to give you a slight preview and a flavor, the NICs, the challenge statements launched today, revolve around a common theme of safe reopening, especially for our key sectors and infrastructure. So for instance, how do we facilitate effective screening, contact tracing, and crowd density detection to ensure the safe environment for events to revitalize our MICE sector? Similarly, are we able to explore novel ways of immersive tourism through technologies such as VR? How may we envision or implement a solution for effective risk control, mitigation, and intervention with minimal manpower for supervision? And in terms of our construction sector, is there also a way to manage not only the workforce and manpower risk, but supply chain risk? So I'll leave it to the problem owners to go through with you in detail later on. And as Edwin mentioned, in addition to the 4 challenges we have at this launch, our ESG colleagues are also launching a series of trade and connectivity challenges to encourage the innovation and solutions in areas such as Internet of Things, big data, process enhancements, and resource sharing for transport, logistics, and trade sectors. There are a total of 28 challenges, 3 of which fall under also the NIC category. First of all, the Container Depot Association, CDAS, on developing autonomous or remote inspection solutions to detect and assess defects in containers and detect findings to respective containers. SATS is also looking to find a common tagging solution for Singapore's air freight industry to track and trace cargo and to provide visibility at each stage of handling process. YCH is looking at AI-enabled resource management and planning solutions to allow the measurement and optimization of manpower and equipment. So the TCC launch will be later at 3 p.m. right after this Innovation Wednesday program, and there will be an additional session to go through the challenge statements in details. So please look out for those. And as I mentioned, this is not a one-off process. We will be launching more calls over the next few months. So again, please be on the lookout for those. Thank you. That's all for the introduction to the NIC. The next few sections will be by the respective problem owners to walk you through the challenge statements. Please feel free to use the QR code here to find out more about the NIC, the challenge statements, and to submit your interests.
Hey, thank you, Alvin. Thank you so much for sharing. I hope everybody has a good understanding of the National Innovation Challenges. If you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A box, and if possible, indicate who your question is for, and we'll take them. So the format of this part of the event is that our speakers are going to speak for 10 minutes, and then we'll have 10 minutes Q&A. So we'll each take the questions as much as possible. If we're not able to answer your questions, we'll post them onto the OIP platform, the forum after the event, and you can actually see your answers there also. Our first speaker is from SESOS, the Singapore Association of Convention and Exhibition Organizers and Suppliers. We'll hear from Vimal Gugadin, the VP of D&I. They are looking for an integrated control system for visitors and exhibitors of the MICE events to facilitate effective screening, contact tracing, and crowd density detection. Vimal, over to you. Vimal, I think you're muted.
All right. Okay.
Hi, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. Basic mistake. Okay, let me just share my screen. All right, so thanks for having me. So, okay, so I'm going to cover a little bit of what we are looking at as part of the NIC with regards to what we're calling a safe event here, all right? So first thing to, I think it's, we all see that already, but with what's happening with COVID-19, especially in the events world, so that's leaving an unprecedented and devastating impact in the events industry, right? Because for a long time now, it's been pretty much, not just in Singapore, but around the world, illegal to organize events. If we have to see the numbers in context, right? If we look at the number of visitors coming to Singapore, and these are numbers from May, as you can see year on year, the number of tourists, and when we talk about tourists here, these are people who are coming in for leisure purposes, but also for business purposes to attend events as well. That has dropped by over 65%, right? This is just a larger version of this graph here, just to show you the impact. And that's why we say like there's little or no people coming into Singapore right now. So as you can see, that obviously then has created quite a bit of problem in the events industry itself, right? And with how we've gone about with the circuit breaker, I think in Singapore, we're taking a pretty methodical approach towards reopening, right? I mean, I think we are all seeing what's happening in the outside world. And this is the approach that we are adopting here. So it has been done in different phases. So we're currently, as you would already know, under phase 2, which is the safe transition. And the next phase towards reopening would be really phase 3. Which will be about Safe Nation, right? And during the phase 3, what we're looking at is the coming back of business events, leisure events, but you know, with limited crowd sizes. We'll talk about a new normal later. I'm going to touch a little bit more on that, but that's what we are gearing towards. right? So in fact, at SACIUS, by the way, is a national trade associations that brings together the events community itself, right? So we did a survey. So we asked people, hey, and that was something that we did back in May, right? We asked people, hey, if let's say there's a physical conference happening in October, which was back then 6 months down the road, so would you attend? And we asked that to the events community itself, right? Guess what? The majority of the people basically would not want to join physical events still, right? But as you can see here, 54%, and that's really the sentiment, right? Say, hey, yes, I will join, but if there are the relevant safety measures into place, right? And then, not sure whether you've heard about this term, hybrid, in the context of events, but here by hybrid, what we really mean is for a conference, for an exhibition, for even for an entertainment event, you got the physical part happening, and then at the same time, you can join the event digitally, right? So we ask people, we ask organizers, are you planning to transform your future events into hybrid? And yes, the majority says yes, because in a way, that's becoming the new normal, right? But we saw that the majority of organizers never had to face this situation before. Because all the while in the events industry, whenever there was a live streaming, let's say you go to a Google I/O event, AWS event, there were always live streaming. But that was always something that was being done on the side. But now the game changes because we're having to rethink this whole thing. Now, suffice to say that we are going to be dealing with a new normal in events. And I use the term events here, not just to refer to business events, and by business events, what we really mean is conferences, large conferences, small conferences, seminars, exhibitions, but also live entertainment events, right? And I think the new normal that we'll be looking at for events for quite a while to come, and we're probably even talking about 2 years from now, there will be hybrid events. Like I mentioned, hybrid will be both the physical and then the digital component with it. But then equally important would be to have the relevant safety measures into place at events. Now, what does that mean to have the safety measures into place? So at SACIUS, so what we have been doing, so we've been working with the relevant government agencies, Singapore Tourism Board in there, to really define what would be safe at events. So very soon, what will be announced within this month itself is basically the safety measures at events, right, that will need to be put into place. And those will be, some of which will be guidelines, some of which will be mandatory as to what events should be doing in Singapore if if people are being allowed to run events. So we see this as an opportunity at the same time to tackle the problem of safety at events as a generic problem. Because guess what? For all events, regardless of the size, you will have to comply, right, in the very near future. And we wanted to tackle this at a national level as a generic problem, then that can be replicated for all events. So we brought about different industry partners, ranging from venues, from organizers, different stakeholders, suppliers, and then to determine, like, for example, hey, what really should be done, right? Like, what would be ideal as a so-called digital solution? And we use the term digital solution as a loose term here. And then we found out that there's specific problems, which I'm going to share shortly, that we want to tackle. But then when we go in the industry, we realized that, hey, lots of these solutions are actually out there. Like, for example, we need to be at events, we need to be able to do temperature screening. We need to be able to do the event registration, to capture the check-in information, to do contact tracing, to do the event check-in, like I mentioned, to be able to do crowd density monitoring, right? So meaning to say, because we are talking about like keeping a safe distance, 1 meter. So how can we then automate that to ensure that this is really actually happening? So the truth is there are such solutions out there, but the thing is they are all being built in different silos, right? As an organizer, as a venue, then I have to probably liaise with multiple different parties, right? To put such a thing into place. And that's a problem, right? That's a problem because then it becomes difficult to control things and to have a standardized experience across the board when we look at it, let's say from a country's perspective. So that's what we're looking at solving here. So what is safe event? So we define safe event as an integrated, so that's the key word here, integrated, as an integrated platform that should be able to be easily deployed at events. And we're using the term events here in a loose sense. And we're talking about events at all scales, ranging from the very small ones to the very large ones with 50, 100,000 of attendees, if we're going towards that, right? So there's really two aspects of that we want to deal with, to tackle with safe event. So the very first thing is to allow seamless check-in and contact tracing for attendees and also staff at events. And then the next thing, the next big thing is basically to keep track of real-time density detection at venues to support risk management. So what that really means is there's a guideline that event organizers will have to adhere to, or even us as attendees as events will have to adhere to ensure there's safe distancing of 1 meter. So as an organizer, we want to be able to automate this such that they get alerts if, let's say, there are some kind of so-called breaches. Or as an attendee, I get some alerts as well, whether I'm in a place where I shouldn't be or where I should not be going because of crowded places. So this sums up in the essence of what we're looking at building. All right. So now I want to go a little bit more in details in terms of the architecture itself and what are we looking at, right? So very important here is that as a solution, what we're looking for is a solution that is API driven right from the start, right? So the core of the application itself is an API, right? And then we have people attending events. So what we foresee for that is that there would be what we call an organizer app. And that organizer app could be just a web app, right? That leverages on the safe event APIs to allow organizers to easily check in people. So then I could be, if I'm running an event of 50 people, small event, it should be like an easy enough tool that I can just simply log into, use to check in people at my event. But at the same time, why API driven? Because the thing is, in so much that we want the industry to adopt the solution, lots of venues or organizers already have their own check-in solutions, event registration solutions. Now, rather than having them change the whole thing on their side to be in compliance with the safety measures that we're putting into place at national level, we want them to be able to simply plug in to the APIs and then be in compliance. And then when I say being in compliance, so the kind of things I'm talking about here is and that's also quite important for us to understand is we're not looking at reinventing the wheel. You would all already be familiar with Safe Entry that has been deployed here. But one of the things that we are looking at here is not to replace something like Safe Entry, but to rather integrate with Safe Entry. Because today, in today's context, you can already imagine that if you had to go to an event, you would have to check into the event to get your ticket or whatsoever, get your badge, and then at the same time do Safe Entry. Right? So now imagine if, let's say, we are now welcoming people from abroad coming to the country who are not so familiar with Safe Entry and all that. So they have to do all of these steps just to be able to go to an event. So we want to make the experience of people seamless as well. And likewise, there's quite a bit of good work that, for example, STB has been doing as well. They have a platform called TIH, and they have an identity platform that's called Visit Singapore account, and then newly released Visit Singapore Pass, right? So again, we don't want to duplicate, reinvent the wheel here, but rather integrate with such platforms, right? And quite importantly, we are looking at ensuring that whatever we are building is scalable, and then we are able to integrate it with other digital platforms. So see, by having such a centralized system here, then what we're looking at here is to be able to analyze the relevant data and then get relevant insights with the different interactions that are happening. and to build future use cases, right? So that's what quite an important component of what we're looking at here. So the next part of the problem statement that we have is really around real-time crowd density detection. So again, for this one as well, safe event API, that's at the core of it. But this is where we probably go a little bit in the hardware sense of things as well, because here the idea is really to be able to detect density and track density management. So how do we do that? So we're not being prescriptive here. So we want to hear from you, like how best to be able to do that on a national level, easily deployable. So is that going to take the form of an app, right? Or is that going to be through beacon devices, through IoT sensors, through just image recognition cameras? We're quite open to it. So that's why we're just calling it the Safe Event Platform, but we're open in terms of seeing how best to tackle this issue, right? And then what we do foresee being built on top of this is like a management app. Like from an organizer's perspective, then I should be able to log into the dashboard and then to see whether I'm being in compliance at my event. And you know what, even like I mentioned earlier, get alerts from an organizer's perspective, or even be able to push alert to attendees if we were to use some kind of native app, right? So that's what we're looking at from an architecture's perspective. Look, why are we looking at doing this? The first thing is really to boost confidence. To boost confidence, as you can see, organizers themselves are looking at or being hesitant to attend events, and I'm quite sure us all joining in here virtually, if you had the choice this month to join a physical event, I don't know, probably you would still choose to join digitally, right? So to boost that confidence for people, and with that, spur the economic recovery of the whole events industry. So that's what we're looking forward to, right? And look, whatever I've described here, guess what? It's not just Singapore, right? So other countries are facing the same problem here. Now, we are taking the bold, I would say the bold initiative, the bold move here to try to tackle the problem at a bigger scale. So that's why we are looking at working together, and then know that whatever is being built here is a solution that, yes, can and will be deployed nationally at Singapore, but it's a solution that can, and in fact, it should be able to be scaled and exported to other countries as well. So look, with that, I'm really looking forward we are looking forward to partnering with you and to really solve this issue here. And with that, yeah, that's it from me. And any questions?
Yep. Thanks, Vima. Thank you. If you look at the Q&A box, there are a few questions for you. Shall we take the one maybe from Roberto Tan? You will have to click answer live. For everybody, the question is, for the integrated platform, do we need to consider the different types of CRM system that each organizer will use to manage event registration? So Vima, you can click answer live on Roberto's question. You can take it.
Right, okay.
Yeah, do you see it?
I think let me just exit that full screen that's hiding.
No problem.
Okay, so while I do that, so probably, okay, I still can't see the button. Okay, never mind. So I'll
okay,
just,
never mind.
okay.
Yeah, just answer the question.
Yeah, so the question is, do we need to consider different types of CRM system for each organizer? No, right? So in this case, we wouldn't be too concerned with the other systems that are available out there. Rather, we want to be a platform that exposes the API, and then for by default, the solution itself should have its own interface that organizers, venues can use out of the box without having to do anything. But for those organizers, users, venues that have their own CRMs and they want to integrate it, then they should be able to have on their hands like the readily available APIs where they can integrate their own systems. So that would be the approach that we'd rather go for.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's a good answer. I hope that's quite clear for it. We have clicked the question as answered already. There's another one. This from Anuj from Startup O, right? It's a global startup platform and has associated venture capital fund based in Singapore. One of their investee companies could help with safe distancing objectives using their tech, which is already deployed at airports elsewhere. However, they're not Singapore domicile, so are they still eligible for attempting the solutions? Overseas countries, overseas companies. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Alvin, would you want to take this question?
Is Alvin
Or
still around?
if not, I'll just take that, and then really on behalf of NIC here. So yes, this is actually open not just to Singapore-based company, right? So we're looking at, to start with, in fact, tackling a Singapore-based problem, but like I mentioned, it's actually a more of a global problem here, right? So yes, it's open not just to Singapore companies, but yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, we'll just confirm that later. We'll answer that question in a bit. There's another third one. Would you be open to considering hardware solutions, sensor networks combined with software?
Yes, for sure. This is exactly what we're looking for, and that's why we're using the broad term of digital solution. Look, we're open for the solutions to be, guess what, either fully app-based or a combination of hardware and software. So hardware then would be things that would have to be installed at the venues themselves to be able to do, for example, crowd detection, right, or density management, right? Because yeah, that might be the simplest way to go about with it. So yes, we are looking forward to such proposals and solutions. Yeah.
Okay. There is another question I have that's coming in, well, quite a few ones. If a proposal specifies the need to use camera and image identification to track density, but yet the visitor declines to be scanned, how would you recommend to overcome this? Do we use legislation?
Yeah, okay. So that's a good question, right? So if you look at, for example, PDPC itself, or rather PDPA, right now there's an exclusion already being applied in the context of tracking people's information for the purpose of health and safety. So that exception today is already there. Like, it was just announced sometime this year that, you're not allowed to capture NRIC of people, but today that's exactly what's being done. Again, just for the purpose of NRIC. So for the foreseeable future, yes, I don't think that would be an issue. Yeah.
Okay. All right. What are some of the factors you would use to evaluate the solution? You mentioned some points like the seamless user experience, the scale where anyone can integrate. What else is there that maybe we missed out just now?
Yeah, look, the solution has to work. So experience, and again, I think like what Alvin was mentioning earlier, we're not looking at, we don't have time, right? So we don't have time. So we do want to have a solution that's available for us to use. We're not looking for an out-of-the-box solutions, right? Because like I said, there are already such things, but we are looking for people with the experience and probably with bits and pieces of the things already there, and then still come together, be able to integrate the different things. If you already have the whole solution, then that's probably even better, right? But at the same time, and while I answer this question, I'll also take another question from Nikhil, which is asking about, like, are we looking only for APIs? So,
Yeah.
so no, it's not just APIs. The API is really the core of what we're looking for, but we are also looking for the organizer app. Like, as an organizer, I don't want to I don't want to use any other system, right? I want to check in people, and I want to make sure that safe distancing is being adhered to. Like, let's say these two separate things. Then I just want to be able to use the Safe Event app out of the box, and that should work. So we're looking for both. So with regards to API, what we're saying is everything must be API driven. Yeah.
All right. Okay, cool. I think we have taken all the questions we have. Any more questions that you may have for Vimal, you guys can continue to post it. We will try to answer the questions on the Open Innovation platform. We'll share all the content after that on openinnovation.sg. Yeah. Thank you, Vimal. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Carrie. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Very cool. Our next speaker is Gervais Chu, Deputy Director, Organizational Design and Innovation at the National Heritage Board. They're looking for 5G-enabled virtual platform for novel and immersive tourism, heritage, and cultural experience. So, Gervais, over to you.
Hi, thanks. Give me 1 minute. Let me see whether I can make this full screen. All right. Hi, thanks, Carrie. And hi, everyone. My name is Gervais from the National Heritage Board. Can you all hear me properly?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good. So I'll jump straight into it. So the background, just very quickly for those who are not familiar, the National Heritage Board is a statutory board under the Ministry of Culture, Community and Youth, and we essentially undertake the role of safeguarding and promoting heritage of our diverse communities and for the purpose of education, nation building, cultural understanding. Practically speaking, we manage 9 different museums and heritage institutions. So they include the National Museum of Singapore, the Asian Civilizations Museum, as well as the Malay Heritage Center, and of course, 6 more. So just for background knowledge, I think we also manage the Indian Heritage Center, the Sun Yat-sen Nanyang Memorial Hall, Changi Chapel and Museum, the Reflections at Bukit Chandu, as well as the Singapore Philatelic Museum, right? So these are the 9 museums that we directly manage. So we are pretty much an operational arm. We have other kind of functions that we undertake as well, including education and outreach, preservation of sites and monuments, heritage research and assessment. So pretty much a broad ambit. But then you may be asking, hey, how come, why are we involved? And actually, I'm pleased to say we have been quite actively involved in the OIP platform. I think some of you, a lot of you, in fact, I think, thank you very much, have been participating and submitting proposals for the challenges that we've been putting up. And we're very thankful for that. And in our case, I think where we thought to really work on this particular rather unique situation we found ourselves in with COVID and all that is how can we push the boundaries in terms of how we allow for people to explore our sort of history, our heritage, but also from a tourism point of view, from a cultural experience point of view, how can we do better and really position ourselves within the current safe visit, I think, ambit, but also moving forward, right? Post-COVID, what would that landscape look like? And in this case, what would that virtual landscape look like? And how can we better position ourselves in a way where we can leverage on that to grow from strength to strength thereafter? So the problem statement we put forward is well, it's quite condensed in terms of a lot of things, but essentially, how might we create an easy-to-use platform for people to remotely access and interact with, and to have compelling, emotionally engaging virtual experiences that can complement the real-world experience, right? So it's a mouthful, but I'll go into a bit more detail. And certainly, I think we did put 5G up front, which I'll also explain a little bit in terms of our thinking. We know it's not a ready network per se in terms of island-wide for Singapore, but I'll explain a bit in terms of what we're looking at. And yes, so what are we looking for? Firstly, I think we are looking for a working prototype for an online virtual environment of the Kampong Glam precinct. Right, so Kampong Glam, as some of you might be familiar, if not, please go in and take a look. But really, it's an area that is rich in history and heritage. For NHB's purposes, I think we have the Malay Heritage Center, which is sited in the center of Kampong Glam. And that is really, I would say, a centerpiece within the Kampong Glam district in terms of as a place to pull people together. To have community events, to really kind of see a particular vibrancy and get people to explore the rich heritage and history of the area. As you can imagine, of course, now it's a bit more difficult to really have this kind of communal experiences within the Kampong Glam area. But also, I think beyond the Malay Heritage Center, I think if you look at the Kampong Glam community, you have, of course, organizations like the One Kampong Glam Association, and really the businesses and I guess, a lot of the kind of interested parties within the Kampong Glam area to be part of this particular project. So we, as part of what we're trying to do is really to rally together a bunch of like-minded people working within the Kampong Glam area to put together this prototype and pilot of really what would a vibrant virtual experience look like. And I think we are looking at the solution to comprise of a few elements. I think I've just listed a few here. There are a lot more details in the challenge brief, so I will not go into the every single line item, but really, firstly, I think we're looking at creating a 3D virtual replica of the precinct, so the Kampong Glam area, as well as specifically the Malay Heritage Center. And so we're referring to, of course, like an in-gallery experience as well, to go through the galleries. And with certain level of navigation to allow people to kind of move around the spaces. So it's not a static view, but really how can you kind of go online really, and navigate the space. I think definitionally, as well, when we talk about virtual, we are not limiting ourselves to just say like VR. No, we know VR with the VR goggles and all that is still not really mass accessible. But really online, I know just log in online, are you able to virtually kind of or digitally move around the precinct and interact? We are looking at the ability to not just view around. So it's not really just going around as a 360 and kind of just moving around. But I think what we are looking for to differentiate this particular challenge brief is really to have transactional kind of components. So firstly, the ability to host and organize online live events and programs, right? So within the space, within the virtual space, are we able to actually create live events and programs that we allow people to maybe just either do a live stream or kind of embed their content. It can be videos, it can be different ways of interacting, and allowing for online users to interact with each other. I think that is a very important component of what we're trying to test bit here. We realize that a lot of online experiences is very solitary. But once again, if I draw back to, hey, if you're looking at the whole Kampong Glam area, we're really looking at a communal experience. Are we able to allow visitors to really interact with each other online, engage with each other in virtual space? So a common example we cite would be like the game Second Life, right? So it's almost like you have a virtual persona that you go into, but you're able to kind of participate and actively engage in various transactions, right? Which leads to the next point, the ability to accommodate in-platform transactions. So within that same platform, of course, we can link out if you need to, but by and large, in terms of navigating that space, you're able to perhaps buy a ticket. You're able to perhaps view a catalog, purchase merchandise, and kind of arrange for it to be delivered to you, right, wherever you are in the world. So stuff like that, I think really looking at transactional components. So it's not just a space to 360, I go in and I look, CC. I think that's readily available. I think as the previous speaker spoke about that, there are ready platforms. But we are looking to push the boundaries to really go into a bit more of a transactional space and having things happen within that space that requires an exchange, whether it's of content, of ideas, and of course, transactional data. We are looking at business users who can possibly create and upload their own content onto the platform. So if I were to kind of imagine this as a space which, once again, as a platform, we make it available. If tomorrow we have a partner who says that, hey, yeah, I know I'm organizing an online event, or I'm organizing something that am I able to upload my videos, or am I able to upload my content onto the platform so that I can engage with people? Can I set up shop in that sense? And the last point here, I think that I just wanted to highlight is really the demonstrating the potential of 5G in enabling a seamless online to offline experience. So what do I mean by that? So I think what is very important for us to bear in mind, at least in our industry, is that yes, COVID does place a certain number of restrictions in terms of physical engagements, but similarly, I think that we cannot live just purely in the virtual world. So we do see the virtual to physical connection being very important. And so eventually, I mean, in the interim, of course, if we are not getting visitors to physically come in, I think we are hoping that, yes, virtually they can explore the space. But eventually when they do come in, I think we do see this platform as being viable to enable this online to offline kind of toggling between what's a physical experience versus a virtual experience. And that can enhance your overall experience in going through the space physically as well. So, and certainly with 5G, I think there's a lot more potential for how that might come to fruition. Overall performance requirements, I think we are hoping that it can be device agnostic, so compatible across operating systems, platforms, accessible on both smartphones and computers. I think this is very important, simply because we don't want to be funneled into a situation where, hey, we're just developing for a rather closed platform, and we want to make it accessible to all, right? So, and most people will navigate on their smartphones. I think that is certainly one main mode. Some will choose to do it on the laptops, so depending on what and where you're accessing this from. I think with this kind of social space that we're trying to create, I think we are hoping that there will be some inbuilt content management and moderation capabilities, whether AI or human assisted, just so that we don't run into a situation where certain kind of abusive social behaviors, online social behaviors are exhibited. And of course, to integrate with existing solutions. One primary partner is, of course, STB. I think they have their tourism information hub. Are we able to kind of really share and distribute content with them? But also kind of integrate with existing digital products, whether it's e-commerce, maps, or communication apps. So not inventing every single module, but really allowing for the integration so that we have a bit more flexibility in terms of the plug and play. Possible use cases, I think certainly I think these are areas that we can also look at in terms of engaging experience through gamification, really about exploring the virtual precinct and incentivize to discover more. Virtual festivals and events, I think this is quite key. As you know, the events industry is actually quite pretty much decimated at this point. Are we able to provide a scalable virtual environment to support such festivals and events, allowing multiple partners to really set up shop and engage virtually with their customers? So once again, it goes back to sustainability, really of their operations as well, and sustaining and kind of providing this kind of full safe visit idea to allow for virtual engagements in lieu of physical, and allow for various modes of content engagement that I mentioned earlier in terms of live streaming of events, performances. So I could potentially go into the site, for instance, and join in a festival. So I can pay for a festival ticket, engage with it virtually, and kind of maybe view a live performance, stuff like that. And lastly, of course, virtual shopping. I think I did mention a bit about that in terms of merchandising, how we are able to really have a sort of like transactional platform and really reinvent what virtual e-commerce looks like through this virtual environment, right? So what last slide here, I think, what's in it for you? Essentially, I think we are looking for partners to join us in this venture to push the boundaries for how we consume culture and tourism experiences virtually, right? We're looking to really create new business models. How can we create viable business models for really the businesses that are suffering? I think really in this current situation, are we able to provide them an avenue by which they can reach out to a broader range of customers? Access to content partners and businesses, I think we will be bringing in a fair amount of partners. I think like-minded, interested people to be participating in this. And of course, to explore new opportunities for digital engagement. I think the prize money for this is 50K, and certainly with opportunities to scale up if successful. And that's it for my very quick brief. I think we'll probably move on to the questions. Yeah.
Yep, Sherway, there are some questions for you. The first one that I want to take is that regarding the in-platform transactions, what kind of transactions are you talking about? And will people be able to buy items on the platform or not? I think this came quite earlier in your speech.
Yep, so I'll just click the answer live, right? And yes,
Yeah.
I think I did address it. We are looking to have the potential to really allow for people to buy items on the platform. Now, certainly for the working prototype, I think there is probably a limit to I mean, we're not looking to build a whole Lazada engine with the amount of support we're looking at for this. But certainly, if you are able to integrate then with some of these platforms, or make it easy for these platforms to kind of allow for purchases to happen or transactional spaces to be happening within the virtual space, yes. But as an end-to-end user journey, taking away the technicalities, yes, we would like people to. For instance, if I am a virtual visitor, I visit the virtual Malay Heritage Center, I'm able to go into the Malay Heritage Center's shop, right, our museum shop, go inside there, browse the catalog and make a purchase, and then have that delivered to you. Yeah, so I think that would be an ideal transaction.
Okay, great. That's good. That's quite clear. I think there's a question from an anonymous attendee who's asking if Facebook Live would be something similar to what we're looking for here.
Yes, I think Facebook Live is one of the avenues. Of course, there are many others as well. I think it could be a Zoom integration. It could be open to kind of other streaming sites. I think there are a lot of rather interesting popular ones. I mean, there's Twitch for the gamers as well. So I think I wouldn't limit it to just say that Facebook Live integration and that's it, right? Because there's really a broad range of audiences. But yes, we would like it to be able to allow for some of these integrations.
Okay, good. This next question has a few levels to it. Are you looking for like a browser-based platform, which I think you kind of answered? What kind of accessibility do we need? And how would the profile of target users be like? And what kind of devices are we looking for them to use to access this environment?
Okay, so it's a very broad question.
Yes.
I mean, if you come by, I mean, as a user, I would say, yeah, sure, no, I would want it to be to everyone, no, but sometimes that may not be necessarily possible given the limitations. But yes, in general, we find we're not that keen on downloadable apps and things that require heavy downloads, simply because we know that the take-up rate for that tends to be quite low. So I think that, and that's inherently a barrier already. So yes, browser-based platforms would be probably would make sense. Simply because I think we know that that would be easily accessible. Now, what kind of accessibility do you need? I'm not too certain of the context behind accessibility, or the definition of accessibility in your mind. Are you referring to in terms of how should I put it? Persons with disabilities, how do they access the content? So I mean, just for context, some of the things that NHB is developing on the digital platforms, we are also putting it through an accessibility reviews. So to make it such that persons with certain impairments or disabilities would also be able to access the platform as far as possible. So I'm not sure if that's what you're looking at, or are you referring to more? Do we need people to be able to log in? I think ideally, if you're looking at transactional space, yes, I think the data capture and the login components should be there so that we are able to track some of these transactions. How would the profile of target users be like? I think in terms of online users, we do see in general in terms of the surveys that we've done, I think over the COVID period, we've actually been running a number of digital initiatives, and we do see the bulk of the people who are engaging with us tend to fall within the 30 to 40, 30s to 40s kind of profile. And those are probably the ones who are more savvy in terms of transacting and really also kind of exploratory in terms of the digital space. And what kind of devices? I think I did mention that in the platform. We are hoping mobile would feature and not just the laptop or desktop-based platforms.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. Very clear. There's a next question on telcos. Basically, they're saying that the requirement focus on 5G, but we assume that we're targeting local users with local telcos, right? So what are some of your thoughts on people preferring to use Wi-Fi as compared to data carrier?
I think, okay, so 5G is an interesting one because we do know that, of course, we as a smart nation, we are kind of moving towards the 5G network coming in, but not quite yet. I think possibly over the next 2 years, I think we would be looking at that being fielded. So earlier I mentioned we are looking at positioning this to allow for the online to offline kind of experience. So for tourists, for instance, I think a lot of them actually come in and they purchase essentially a card, actually at relatively cheap rates, and they can have data access from there. 5G network, as we all know, it's not faster than Wi-Fi. So if there is a Wi-Fi within the museum or within the spaces, I think it's probably on par with 5G. But what it actually allows as a seamless transaction or seamless mode is that when I step out of the museum, I can continue on to achieve that same level of fidelity that I'm getting when I'm in the museum, right? I think that's probably what 5G allows for. So in that sense, it will be targeted more at a physical visit when a tourist comes physically to the site. How would they be able to leverage on 5G, and not just for like external tourists, but local visitors as well? And yeah, I would say so long as they subscribe to a data carrier and if 5G is available and there's a means for it to kind of really carry the amount of data throughput that we're looking at. It could be, for instance, a virtual guide that brings you around the entire space physically and connects you with then that virtual space. So that real kind of online to offline seamless handover is where we see the benefit of 5G. But it being preliminary, I think what we are looking at and centered on the prototype is really are we able to provide a proof or demonstration of what is the potential of 5G for this online to online activity? But yeah, I think that's what I can say for now, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. The next question is, does the solution require art assets to be developed as well, or mainly focus on the interaction and technical component?
Okay, so we do have some assets in-house. I mean, in our case, with regards to artifacts and objects, I think there are some that we have scanned and all that. So there are some available, but I do anticipate that as part of this kind of prototype development, there may be the need to actually look at creating new content as well. And so to answer the first question, I would say yes, I would look at beyond the interaction and technical component, and also look at what really is that kind of creative creation process, because I also don't want to have a situation where it's great to have a technical solution, but then the process of creating those assets is so elaborate or so complex that it probably makes it impractical. Yeah, so I would want to cover the art assets creation in this case.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Can the solution include other
Yeah,
paid
the next part of the
services?
question is asking, can the solution include other paid services which require maintenance beyond delivery of product, for example, like cloud hosting, for people to upload their models?
Yes, I think it has to be a sustainable solution overall, right? So I think what we are, as we are developing this platform, we are looking at making it available to a diverse range of businesses and companies. It can be arts companies, but it can also be like traditional business companies. And how then do we make it a viable platform for them to subscribe to and see the value in doing that? So yes, I think sustainability is an important part of it. Yeah, I would say yes. Other paid services that require maintenance beyond the delivery of product, I think those can be factored in simply because it adds to the overall cost and maintainability of the system, and so it should be factored in.
Okay. Because of time constraint, I'll just take one last question. Are you looking at two? This is by Rizal. He's asking, are you looking at two portions for this? One of the virtual world, and when things get better, how it blends with regular integration. That means post COVID-19, and then also target audience, which I think we have answered that.
Yep. Yes, so I would say yes. I think we are looking at a virtual space, of course, but I think specifically with the 5G component, I think that's where the demonstration of proof of concept in that sense comes in to say, how would this virtual world then have a kind of life beyond just the virtual space, but really integrating that with with the regular integration. Yeah. I mean, just very quickly, I'll just kind of address a few others. IP solution, generally speaking, we are background IP. Of course, we respectively own it. Foreground IP, as a government entity, so far in terms of our kind of IP requirements, we just require a perpetual license to use it. But we are not necessarily looking at owning the IP. Yeah. And yeah, I think for the rest, we kind of addressed it.
Kind of answered it, yeah. Okay, thank you so much, Jovere. If any questions that I'm still receiving, we'll put it onto the platform later and we'll try and check in with you.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. If you can unshare your screen.
Doing that.
Yeah, okay, cool. All right, thanks. Nice chatting with you.
Thanks.
Next up, right, thank you for staying with us throughout. We have two more speakers. Our next speaker is actually Stephen Mock, Deputy Director, Deputy Program Director, ACIP BCA, and Tatsuya Hirano, Deputy General Manager, Marketing and Corporate Planning from Kajima. They're looking for a digital tool to facilitate a COVID-safe, smart, and integrated management of worksite and workforce. So I'll hand over to Stephen and also Tatsuya.
Okay, am I heard?
Yes, you're on.
Okay, Stephen, you want to go ahead? Stephen? You're muted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, thanks so much for this NIC challenge call. As a sector lead, together with Kajima, we thought a solution is timely now, as the construction industry is facing lots of issues under this COVID situation. And earlier on, there were solutions out there that help to mitigate the early response. But going forward, we think a more integrated approach, as well as more comprehensive approach can be had in the innovation space. And that's why together at Kajima, we post this challenge statement to the innovation community to source for the solutions that the sector would need. Without further ado, maybe I will get Tatsuya Hirano-san to describe the challenge ahead.
Okay. So I will use my slide. Do you see my slide?
Yes, we can see your slide. If you can
Do you
present
see?
it. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, this is about our construction industry and challenge descriptions. Okay, first of all, I just brief you what was the impact to the economy by stopping construction industry. The total construction demand in Singapore last year was approximately 33 billion estimated, which means 2.5 billion Singapore dollar per month are being procured, paid, and hired someone, which means it is a money flowed into a Singapore economy. So stopping our industry totally means almost $3 billion stops floating or circulating. In the circuit breaker period, our industry become approximately 5 to 10% only. So a lot of those money are not exactly our revenue, but these are the money floating around in the market, which has been stopped for a long time. And another issue, how do we get paid? We need to have a construction work progress physically. Without any progress, we don't have any payment, and we can't buy or we can't pay to other either. What has happened at the construction site? The first one, no trouble, no business trip. Maybe our impact would be 0 to 5 points or so, even easier without a visitor. But the later part, material and construction components stopped coming in, especially from Malaysia, which impacted us 10 to 20% in the beginning, and almost no site work allowed during a circuit breaker, which stopped our job maybe 70 to 80%. We can do the drawing or scheduling or planning or even the virtual construction, but those are basically a preparation works for the work. It does not give any progress to the site work. So in a sense, it does not make any money to the industry. Currently, we are preparing for reopening, but we have a lot of obstacles and to be reduced or removed. What is needed to reopen the construction site? We have BCA and the MOM slide, which describes details, but briefly, we need a green condition for the worker, including the dormitory and the transportation, and which are additional cost for labor, less productivity per money, and keeping safe distance at work at site, which most likely less productivity at site, and accurate logistics to site. With uncertainty of these situations under COVID conditions, we are a little skeptical about the accuracy of logistics. And monitoring of those additional activity, costly, and we have to spare the people to do the monitoring and reporting. So hundreds of people come to site, work at site, and goes home to be monitored and reported in somehow by our people. And what is not expected as an answer for this challenge is not the rise of a construction robot, unless they can start work end of this year. Or not a virtual construction either. It does not give a real progress to the site. So points to be highlighted. Payment or the industry works with a physical progress. We wish to see the idea to help or aid actual works with new technologies or new approach or combination of something we have in a different way. And our program is not only one, so many aspects to eliminate or reduce obstacles. So please find your own aspect you could participate or you could tackle with, so that we can share some of our productivity back to or closer to a normal conditions. So just as Steve Jobs says, creativity is just connecting things. We are not expecting a genius robot. We are expecting something we can do it soon with new combinations or new applications as an idea. This is the end of my presentations.
All right, thank you so much, Hirano-san. Is Stephen going to add anything else? Otherwise, we'll take a question. We'll take some questions from the floor. Stephen, are you adding anything else to the presentation?
Hello.
Hi.
I'd like to add this point that we are open to all kinds of technology. If you look at it, construction site is about resource planning. It's about human, materials, equipment, machinery. And what COVID has impacted is adding on more constraints in a very dynamic environment. And as you can see, it is like the wish list is like a enterprise resource planning platform that is on steroids, that is dynamic and responsive. And it's also got to be easy to use for the people down on the ground, which means it can be a mobile app as an add-on or as an interface. And also looking at even day-to-day equipment, even like the QR coding to track elements and all that. Those are part of the integration process. We also saw in the early stage of the COVID response with Bluetooth devices to text and all that. Those are additional so-called COVID-safe type of applications that they will write with the construction site activities. And we want to see more integration of such applications so that for the construction planner, it has one source of information that is accurate so that he can make informed decision going forward. That's all for me.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Let's take some questions. I think one of the questions that's interesting here is that what are some of the current challenges with logistics? Which of them are COVID-19 induced, or has logistics always been a problem that we're trying to solve?
Logistics has been short of visibility, true, especially the international logistics. But the COVID things makes the situation to hard to see, from the hard to see to unexpectable. So We are not even sure what will be our problem after this circuit breaker time, whether we could have accurate logistics or not. So there might be an aspect that we could appreciate any idea, new idea from our solvers.
Okay. Maybe you can share what are some of the current challenges that are to do with logistics?
The hardest challenges are actually imposed by government under each government. So it is very, very difficult for anyone to tackle or to challenge. But at least if we have a higher visibility of logistics itself over components, that might be a one of help that we could expect. I mean, the construction components are like not the raw materials, but precast concrete components, or such as or prefabricated bath units. These are usually made in Malaysia or Thailand or in China. So if we could have a better way to follow the logistics, that's one of the challenge. But actually, logistics wouldn't be our major problem. Our major problem would be safe site, green site operations, especially the human movements.
Okay, all right. We'll take it as that question was answered. I think let's talk about, okay, construction has a lot to do with resource planning, as Stephen mentioned, right? Where the operation sites themselves are considered inventory sites. Was robotics and a strong inventory management system such as Amazon's considered to be a possible solution?
Inventory management, I don't understand very clearly about this.
Okay, I think basically it's talking about would the inventory management system be a possible solution? So managing inventory, creating a system for that.
Is it a physical inventory management or software inventory management?
It could be a software one, I think.
I see. I can't imagine what kind of inventory management could solve our or could be a help, since our materials are how could I say that? It's not like a small components, or it's not something we have a list of orders, but we engineer what is needed to make a building as a drawing says, which is more likely engineering than inventory.
Okay. I think maybe if Stephen or yourself can take this question, you can answer it into the chat box later.
Okay.
Otherwise, we'll take it onto the platform.
Okay.
Or maybe Nigel, you can clarify the question later by asking another one. That will make it easier for us. Let's take another one. Would modifications to the safety helmet integrate with tracking devices be allowed, especially since it's the most common tool or ingredient to all workers on the work site? So we're talking about the safety helmet.
No, that's a good idea. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
Or
So
anything attached to helmet or whatever. Right.
Yeah. Okay, Ken, this is a good question, I think. So yes, the answer is any modification safety helmet would be a good idea. So you can consider that. Let's talk about inadequate material on site Do you have any issues with that? Not enough materials on slide or slow reordering process to let in delay of work?
So far, we haven't started yet. So the largest problem is we don't have people to receive the material on site, even though they are coming in. So we haven't seen the situation yet. We might see in little future, when we are accelerating a job than the usual, we might face that.
Okay, yeah, I think that makes it quite clear. We might face that after this process. Answer live done. Okay. Can maybe Hirano-san highlight on the top 3 priorities to work on so that the startups who are interested can actually focus on that?
In large, movements of labor, how we monitor, and as a top one, and maybe it's closer, but it's how to make the monitoring or reporting easier is another one, which is more on our staff side. The first one, I rephrase. The first one is monitor the worker himself. And the second one would be how to make the monitoring and reporting easier for our management staff. Third one is, it's a bit broad questions, but we are depending on body temperature only about the condition of a worker, and which is, I'm not quite sure it is the only way to see the condition of labor all the time, or even the what happens if there is a new case and emergency call system or evacuations methodologies. Those would be the thinkable use case.
Okay, those are your top 3 priorities. I hope that answers your question. I can take one last question before we move on to the next speaker. So can we summarize that maybe the main focus here is to create a safe environment for workers to reduce the risk of stopping work? Yes? Right. Yeah, yes. That's right. Okay, good. Thank you so much, Hirano-san. I think Hirano-san and Stephen, if you can take a look at some of the questions in the Q&A box, some of them we've not been able to answer. If you can answer them by typing the answer in, or we will reach out after the event to take the questions onto the OIP platform. Yeah. Thank you everybody for asking your questions. Thank you, Hirano-san. Thank you, Stephen.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So to sum up what Stephen and Hirano-san has shared, you can also reach out to us on the info@openinnovation.sg and we'll try and answer some of your questions later. Yeah? Okay, last speaker that we have from today, we'll hear from PSA, who's looking to track and trace health of port workers to better manage, monitor, and act on pandemic risk. So we'll welcome Phineas Tan, Assistant VP of PPTI, and Colin Yip, AVP of Agile Transformation. Can we have them? Hello.
Hello, hi.
Hi. Yes, you can hear you, Colin.
Okay, just give me a second.
No problem.
Okay, I'll let my colleague Phineas take us through the first part of our sharing.
Yep. Hi, everyone. This is Phineas from PSA. So we're gonna just I'm gonna cover a little bit of what PSA is about and what we do, so that when Colin goes into what we need for this, you understand it a bit better. Yeah. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. So PSA at a glance. We are the container port operator for Singapore, and shipping actually brings majority of the goods in Singapore. Over 90%. And as PSA, we are also key in transshipping in the region, as the cargo volumes that we handle in Singapore itself over 80% are actually transshipped, which means it goes comes from somewhere else and goes to somewhere else. And in the Singapore context, daily necessities like meat, vegetables, and eggs are shipped through um, the port. And you may have seen some of these Facebook posts by MTI, in terms of eggs coming from Poland or vegetables coming from other sources. And our workforce is prone to disruption by COVID. And this could impact both the provision of daily necessities to Singapore as well as regional trade flow. In fact, since the COVID situation started in late January, we have been practicing safe management in the port. But even though that is being done, when we have a suspected case, we need to do contact tracing and quarantine. And this, depending on where the case has been and who he has come into contact with, it could potentially translate to 5% of our workforce being put on quarantine or LOA. Yeah, next slide. So in terms of the number of people who work in the port, we have over 6,000 staff from PSA that are employed by PSA, as well as over 3,000 partners and suppliers. Partners and suppliers could be people that work for PSA or people that work for our customers, the shippers and shipping lines. We run 365 days a year, 24/7 operations. We have operations on the vessels, at the wharves, in the yards where the containers are stored, and these are all monitored by control centers. And the working staff within the port, they utilize internal bus interchange hubs as well as canteens. In addition to that, we also operate 2 dormitories, housing close to 3,000 workers. Next slide. So at the wharf and the vessel, there's a number of things that we do. Firstly, on board the ship, we unlash and we lash the containers. And at the wharf, when the containers are handled, the workers have to remove twist locks. That's the center picture. Or install twist locks if the containers are going on board the vessels. And the workers also do a berthing and unberthing of the vessels, by securing the ropes that are then used to secure the ships. Yeah, so there's quite a lot of manpower that's involved in this. And in this itself, the workers who work for PSA or suppliers may also come into contact with the seafarers who are sailing around the world, may have come into contact with different people. Yeah, so that's also an issue with contact tracing. Next slide. At the yard, we have cranes that operate in the yard to handle the containers and store them in the yard, as well as prime movers that move around. So typically, a prime mover driver would be more isolated from other workers. However, he also does have his meal breaks. He also does have his interaction with people at the bus interchanges, at the canteens. Yeah, so that's one area that we find difficult to track. Yeah. And in addition to our own drivers, we also have contract drivers that are employed by shippers to come in, send their cargo into the port or take it out of the port. Yeah. Next slide. And at the office or in the office-based environment, we have people who run the control centers. So these are pictures of our staff in their control centers, and you can see that we do comply with safe distancing, more than one meter apart. However, there's still it's still quite blunt in the way we do our contact tracing, because we just go by the number of people deployed in that room at that point in time, and we don't really know how much contact he may have had with person A, B, C, or D. Yeah, slide. And yeah, these are some pictures of the areas where people board and disembark from buses. Also the canteens where they purchase their food and have their meals, and also the waiting areas for where they wait for collecting buses. Last slide on the dorms. And we also operate 2 dormitories, one in Brani Terminal and one in Pasir Panjang Terminal, and they house close to 3,000 staff. Yep, that's all. I'll hand it back to Colin. Colin, I think you're good.
Yeah, okay. Sorry about that. I muted myself. So I hope all the pictures earlier gave a good context to the environment that we work in. I think that is quite important in order to understand eventually the kind of solution that would be workable for us. So you saw earlier we have up to about 6 to even up to 9,000 workers, and they come from various places, and in the course of work they need to uh, move through different work locations, if you like. In coming out with our requirements for this, I'm just going to go through, and all this will be in a brief as well. But I think the key thing that we want to see is that we want this solution to be both integrated and sustainable. So let me just elaborate on that. I think integration from the point of view of we don't want a lot of siloed products and solutions whereby the company then has to take the effort to tie it all together. And this is not only our own efforts, but also the efforts that we need to fulfill for some regulatory reasons. For example, to MOM, declarations that we need to make. So we want this to be integrated such that we are able to manage this, not just actually for this COVID situation, but we are looking at a longer term, which is why the word sustainable comes in. So whatever solution is in place has to be able to be easy to manage, and such that even if there's a future, touch wood, pandemic scenario, this solution will still be relevant, and not only for the immediate COVID-19. So there are 5 aspects of what we're looking for, and the first is really, and probably the core, is contact tracing. Basically, how do we quickly and accurately identify the close contacts once we have a suspect case? Okay, and some of the challenges here would be understanding the environment that we work in. So in the port, this is an outdoor environment. There's a lot of metal structures which may interfere with some of the technology out there, which may not be able to, whose accuracy may be affected by that. And another consideration is that, we know there are some national, initiatives like Trace Together. So one of our thinking is also that, if whatever we implement in the port, right, is it able to, interoperate with something on the outside? So if, let's say, this worker goes home, let's say you're not staying at a dormitory, right? Would then he need to handle 2 different contact tracing applications? So that's contact tracing. Safe distancing is a more specific area whereby we really want to nudge people to, maintain that 1 meter distance apart from each other. And if there are ways we can do that by actually using some wearables or something similar to give some real-time feedback to the user, that is something we see as a more kind of a proactive way to try to encourage the right behavior. The third element will be health monitoring. So temperature taking is something which is currently we need to do, all the workers need to do twice a day, and all this needs to be submitted to MOM. And one of our challenges here is that whatever we submit, internally, we also want to have our own kind of tracking. So we are trying to find ways to make this process and experience, especially to the worker, a bit more seamless, which brings me back again to the integrated part of the solution I was talking about. Okay, the fourth part is about crowd sensing. And this is where you saw some of the pictures earlier, whereby there are some places whereby people typically gather, right? Canteens, it could be at transport hubs. And we also want to be able to be notified when there is overcrowding, in this area, so that action can be taken. And lastly, and importantly, we are also looking for a way that all the documentation and clearance that is needed in order for us to return to work, right, which includes safe entry, which include temperature submissions, which include, the green worker being cleared to work, can be integrated into the solution so that we do not need to scramble across multiple platforms in order to get this working. Okay, we have 3 additional points about, in terms of device consideration. So at the moment, we are thinking of something like a wearable, right? And when we think about that, and understanding the environment that we work in, we need for such devices or whatever is can be proposed to be ruggedized, to have long endurance in terms of battery life, because many of these workers, they are out for shifts as long as 12 hours, and if you factor in the transport time here and there, it needs to last at least for their shift. And lastly, we would want this device to be standalone and not require a dependency on individual user phone. Yeah. So this one, I mean, when I talk about individual worker, the workers that we have, is a mix of foreign workers that may be living in a dormitory. It could also be our own local workers or contractors that actually, live and then they come into work. So we want to try to make whatever we have to issue or use something that is not affected by the individual user's own phone. And the last point really is also probably a bit more forward-looking, and I think we recognize that whatever is needed for us now to return to work realistically may change going forward, right? So, and when requirements change, it could be that whatever device that we implement today may not be enough, or maybe whatever information that or report that we need today will change in the future. And that's why I think we are looking at solutions that allow us to, bring all these, be it wearables or, integration platform together, in a way where it's modular and in a way which actually allows us to, move forward with some kind of future proofing. In a way whereby, if let's say, even if there's a new kind of device that we find we need to do, we can somehow integrate it with this platform because it is architected properly. And so we will not be forced to have to think of something else entirely. And part of this also comes the data part of the story, whereby a lot of information is going to be collected, be it through the contact tracing, temperature, and those you saw in the earlier slide. And we want to be able to have a way whereby we can actually analyze this data and see how we can make use of it, from a company point of view. So these are some of the things that currently, when we think of what would help us return to work safely, not just now but actually really going forward, these are some of the key things that we think are required. This last slide is basically just coming from a user point of view, right? What do you want our workers to know and experience? So I think from a worker point of view, I'm not going to go through the points, right? But basically, this is what some of the requirements earlier actually translate to. I think we want our workers to be able to focus on the work, right? So that we want the experience to be seamless so that productivity is not affected. At the same time, from a supervisor and a company point of view, we want to be able to make sure that we fulfill, number one, our obligations to report. And when things do happen, that we are able to quickly be able to drill down and then take the appropriate action. And in certain cases, we may want to use some of the data to actually further then take some proactive or preventive action. If let's say we can gather some behaviors from the data. So this is the broad scope of what we're looking at. And I think this is where we appreciate ideas coming from the industry of how some of these things can be stitched together into something that is sustainable. Yeah, thank you.
Hey, thank you, Colin. Thank you. I think there were some questions asking regarding safety helmets, wearing masks and sanitizing hands during work, but your colleague Phineas has answered that in the chat box. So if anybody wants to refer to those questions, you can look there. I will take a few open questions now. Let me see. There's a question from Benjamin. To control mass mobility of operators in PSA, he thinks that wearing RFID tags supported by IA and connected to individual mobile devices will be adequate. It will be sufficient for contact tracing and providing real-time alert for any social distancing rules. Are we allowed to deploy probes and antennas everywhere in the port areas and control rooms?
Okay, Phineas, do you have any comment on this? Or?
We would prefer a solution that is more easily deployable, I think, in terms of not having to put in so much hardware. I think PSA has been looking at track and trace, not just because of COVID, but actually over the past few years. And we have tried a number of different technologies. And generally speaking, we prefer to have something that's less infrastructure heavy. Yeah.
Correct. I think you mentioned wearables just now also, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe if I just add on that, I mean, if you notice the PSA environment, right? I mean, in the external environment, there aren't that many, in a way, fixed structures that I think is suitable for if you're talking about covering the entire area. But I think there are some areas where we mentioned, whereby I mentioned earlier about crowd sensing, right? Those are probably the more well-defined areas, like maybe canteens or internal areas, and probably deploying hardware there would be more practical and feasible. But for contact tracing, where the people are actually out all over, you know, in a very huge work area, at the moment, our view is that it's not practical to basically cover the entire area with devices for the purpose of location.
There's another question regarding wearable device, right? On whether this is a mandatory suggestion. If a user's personal device can do the same job, is it not viable? Maybe you can talk about the challenges of using personal devices instead.
Okay, I will start. Phineas can add on later if there's any. I think our consideration is that actually we some of the workers, I mean, okay, we talk about workers in general, right? But actually there are many different job roles. So some of the workers, you know, when they work, I mean, safety is quite paramount, right? And we want to make sure that they whatever device that they want to wear actually is not, you know, it's going to be safe. And I think in terms of the dependency on personal device and you know, for smartphones, I think for some of the users, even though they do bring it along with them, but I think they're only allowed to use it in certain areas, and generally we discourage them to use it while on the job. The other thing that we have come across is that I mean, we have looked at some contact tracing solutions, you know, ourselves as well, and we do know that for those solutions that depend on certain smartphones, I mean, the sheer variety of different kinds of hardware that's out there actually does make a difference in terms of the accuracy of doing things like, for example, distancing, right? So that's why we thought that having a standalone one would actually achieve two things. One, it actually provides a common hardware standard across the, in a way, the worker population. So you know, anything that any inaccuracies that may come from hardware differences can be addressed. As well, it is something that potentially, again, this is just, you know, thinking ahead, but if let's say people come into our area and it's something we need to issue with them, right? It is something that is more easily tracked than rather than just maybe an app or something on you know, on a guest or on a visitor's device.
Okay. Phineas, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think Colin covered it pretty much.
Okay. All right. Cool. Thank you, gentlemen. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. We hope that we'll see many solutions being submitted for your challenge statement. I would like to thank everybody for your questions. We are almost running out of time today, so I'll end the event. For any questions unanswered, we'll take them onto the OIP forum after the event, and we hope to see your submissions for this call. Thank you for joining us. Look out for the next Innovation Thursday event, which will be held on a Thursday, 6th of August, 2020. And aside from the 4 NIC challenges on the OIP, do check out the full list of NIC challenges on the Open Innovation Network by scanning the QR code. Can we show the last QR code? Our last holding slide? Yeah, so you can actually scan the QR code to access this website, or you can go to openinnovation.sg/national-innovation-challenges. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Hope to see all your submissions, and we'll see you at the next Innovation Thursday event. All right? Thank you.